has taken over. Let's go. It's Ferrall. Coast to coast. Steaks, chicks, stacks. You and I are going to make a lot of money. It's Ferrall, coast to coast. Carver High, have you ever seen anything more frightening than the corn cobs sticking off of Mike Evans' feet in his sliders in the Intercontinental elevator when we went down 70 flights with him, and I pointed to you. I gave you the Always Sunny in Philadelphia tap behind the back, and I looked down on the ground, and then you looked down on the ground, and you saw those puppies. I mean, they were screaming, weren't they, those toes? Have you ever seen anything worse in your life?
Not quite. For your boy, Mike Talons Evans, that day in the Intercontinental in the hotel. Your boy, Mike Talons Evans. He's got himself some more money today.
You can go to
2-year deal. He go get a Petty. 2-year deal worth $52 million, $35 million guaranteed. So this was he was going to be the top wide receiver that was going to be available next week in free agency. He is now off the market, Scotty, and the Bucs also feel that will now help them also bring Baker Mayfield back into the fold.
Yeah, and well, now you wonder if they're going to be able to do that kind of a nice deal for Baker Mayfield, who is not taking a hometown discount in Tampa. I know this morning on the early line, the mayor of Miami, Joe Ranieri, and our boy Donnie Rightside talked about the Evans deal when it broke.
Hot topics here, none hotter than fresh off of the press here. Mike Evans, 2 years, $52 million with a $35 million guarantee to go back to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He never hits free agency, or the Bucs get one of their big markers back. But also, as I take a look at, get used to this. 2 for 52, that salary cap going up. We are going to see a bonanza of salaries moving forward here, Joe.
Yeah, no, we are, and kudos to Evans, who it looks like at least over the next couple of years will probably, Tampa drafted him 7th overall in 2014. He's going to spend his entire career with Tampa, something, outside of the quarterback position you probably don't think you're going to see a whole lot of. And he's the only guy in NFL history to open his career with 1,000 or more receiving yards in his first 10 seasons in the league. I mean, the guy has been as steady as there is. I'm glad they finally figured it out, because Mike Evans should remain in Tampa and should end his career as a Tampa Bay Buck.
From the early line today on SportsGrid, Joe Ranieri and Donnie Rightside. I will say welcome to our radio affiliate, Sirius XM, channel 159, and Sports Byline and their radio affiliates out of San Fran. D-Pack holding it down for us. We continue on with massive NFL skinny.
We have a lot of massive NFL skinny, that's for sure. We kind of knew weeks ago when the season ended that Eagles center and now media mogul and star Jason Kelce was going to be retiring, Scotty, from the NFL. Well, he made that official today in Philadelphia, meeting with the media. I only have a small piece of this. This is like 30 or 40 seconds of that entire 45 minutes. But I would say, and rightfully so, listen, he was very emotional. He's leaving the game that he has given him so much and he has loved so much. But the majority of the 45 minutes was spent looking just like this. Jason Kelce.
The foreign objects that rest upon my shoulders and head weighed me down and unbalanced my awaiting body.
What? You've always had my back. I love you. And I love my brother. And I love drinking. And taking my clothes off in public. Yeah. Maybe you shouldn't have retired. If you can't handle this, you should play again another year. Prepare yourself for moments like this. Oh, your family has your back. Wow.
I
got to tell you,
his brother,
I'm a wreck.
Travis was there. His parents, his brother Travis Kelce, his wife.
Glad he
everybody
got dressed up for the event. I mean, he shows up in the wife beater. Honestly, these guys.
Gave the entire story of his career, and very sad indeed for Jason Kelce. Finished. But that could be one of those, you never know, Scotty, with these guys, right? That could be one where, mid-November rolls around and the Eagles are good and they get an injury on the offensive line and you're still in shape, Jason. Why don't you come on down to the link? No, you think that's it. Finished.
Yeah, I think he's going to be doing a new line of soup commercials with his mother.
Well, that's possible too, but they love this guy already, so I'm sure he'll be on some broadcast next year, whatever network it's going to be. I'm sure somebody's going to be having him.
Maybe the new alternate Kelce channel on ESPN that they'll develop.
That's coming. Once the other guy goes, that. They will have that for you as soon as he retires, Travis.
And then they will fire the Manning brothers and replace them with the Kelces.
The Combine in Indianapolis, everybody had a great time there over the past week. We did have, everybody got all up in arms, a record-setting 40 time by Xavier Worthy, wide receiver from Texas, 4.21 40, besting the previous record that was set by noted Hall of Famer, John Ross, who had the record, former wide receiver in the league. So that's the thing, Scotty. Everybody gets all gassed up about the 40 times at the NFL Combine. Meanwhile, if you look at the list of the top 10 40 times ever, not exactly a who's who of Hall of Famers and all pros. John Ross, Dree Archer, Jerome Mathis, Marquise Goodwin, Tyrone Calico. You want me to go on with all the guys with the highest 40 times ever?
I just wanted to say that all of the players that play in the league now get into the Hall of Fame.
That's true, too. Everybody gets in. You played, you're in. Buzz around the Combine is that J.J. McCarthy could be a top 10 pick. So that's going to happen now. This is our first buzz around the Combine. Everybody watched him. He was the only guy to show up and want to throw and do medicals, so he automatically gets to move up the board into the top 10. Congratulations
Morency
to JJ.
has him going to the Falcons at 8.
Very possible. I would put nothing past it at this point. The Chiefs will use their franchise tag on cornerback L'Jarius Sneed. He was excellent for them this past year in winning the Super Bowl. The Panthers, who really can't do anything right anymore, have stopped talking contract with their stud edge rusher, Brian Burns, one of the only guys on the team that matters.
Their best player.
And we're just going to not talk to him. So
Devers
they're
a
pretty
lousy
good over
owner.
there.
He really is. How can you be that rich and yet you're that cheap with your product?
Embarrassing. It really is embarrassing. Tyron Smith and the Cowboys unlikely to get back together. Of course, left tackle far apart on a contract. Jerry Jones says the Cowboys don't need to extend Dak Prescott. Yeah, we'll see. And the Packers are unlikely to bring back A.J. Dillon. That's because he stinks. That's why the Packers are unlikely to bring back A.J. Dillon. That's why.
A great big that can block shots, a team that can play defense, and seniors that can put the ball in the hole. That's who you bet on. You don't bet on freshmen. You don't bet on teams that don't play defense. There you go.
I mean, you got to run the guy over to call a foul in a tie game in that kind of a spot. That was a bad job by those refs.
Ferrall Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
The Lakers lose by double digits last night on the road in Phoenix against the Suns. The Suns get their first victory following the All-Star break, winning by 10 in covering.
Anthony Davis played 42 minutes in that game. LeBron James played 37 minutes in a loss. This is the same thing. It's like repeating this over and over and over. Sure, do you want to win these basketball games? Yes, but you sort of say to yourself, all right, at what cost do we have?
The early line. only on SportsGrid.
Like the Minnesota Wild were down by 2 goals today. They were down by 3 goals, actually, today at one point. And they came back and won. Like teams like, the Edmonton Oilers and the Coyote game went back and forth. The NHL really, you could argue, really is the best sport for in-game betting, where you can pull the trigger on both teams.
Sports Rage Late Night, only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Rick Caro is our sports business and legal insider extraordinaire on SportsGrid from Harvard, no less. And he's a regular on SportsGrid and, of course, on Coast to Coast and on Carver and Lisi on SportsGrid Radio. And we got him today to talk about a lot of things. And we'll start with the passing of Chris Mortensen, of course, the longtime extraordinary reporter at ESPN in the NFL circles. I was friends with Chris. I knew him in Atlanta, in my many stops in Atlanta, and he was always just a terrific guy to me. He was just the nicest guy in the world. You heard a lot of that today on ESPN about how incredibly nice he was to everyone, because that's who he was.
Yeah, well, the other thing is I didn't know nearly as well as you did, but I knew him enough to know that his talents allowed him to be a nudge and be inside everybody's business, but nobody minded because that's the way he is and was. There are a lot of quote unquote, insiders that try to get scoops by being a bit more abrasive than the next guy, and he wasn't that way. And so probably the best tribute I could give as a kind of half journalist and half business guy is that he transcended both. And I knew a lot of business people in the industry who would be excited about talking to him, not because they wanted to give false information, but just because he was genuinely a nice guy.
Well, one of the things I knew about him was that he was a great writer and that he transcended into television. And he reminded me of Myron Cope. Myron Cope was a legendary writer and then became an even more legendary broadcaster, not only in sports radio, but as a Steeler broadcaster. With Hargrove and through the years he did with Fleming great things, and it all started as a writer, and he was always really special to me. And he passed away at 72. He had cancer and battled it for a long time. So rest in peace, Chris. And our thoughts and prayers are certainly and condolences out to his family and friends and his colleagues at ESPN. Paris. They're ready. The Olympic Village is already done. It only cost $2 billion.
Yeah, but look, the way France will be remembered if they pull this off, okay, is the Olympics that didn't require a whole lot of new building. And even this building that is one of those that is going to be there to develop the 14,500 athletes that are part of the deal. It'll also be known as a place that's going to convert to a 6,500 residential area, by the way. And by the way, Paris is doing a lot of good things. President Macron says he is going to swim in the Thames because it hasn't been swimmable since 1901. When he was asked when he's going to do it so the media will show up, he said, I'm not going to tell you. Maybe you guys will try to figure out how to come to see me, and I'm not going to do it. It's going to be a very successful game.
So let's talk about the handles of these states that allow betting now. New York finally jumped in to the mix. New Jersey was already there. New York at the start of 2022. In November, they had their busiest month ever, handling $1.6.2 billion. And then, I mean, you look at all of these states, it really is crazy. Jersey, year to year, 40%, same period last year. Pennsylvania had its best 3 months ever, 829 million. New York, they cracked 2 billion in October. It's crazy. It goes on and on and on. Illinois up, Arizona up, Tennessee up, Indiana up, Kansas up, Colorado up, Massachusetts. I mean, Maryland, Louisiana, Connecticut. I mean, I guess people like sports betting.
Well, yeah, but here's the other thing about that, which is really important. You've got 30 states. You're going to have a lot more. And in the past, the FanDuel, DraftKings, they had to promote in. So they had a marketing deal where you would give away a lot of stuff, and that cut into the margins. Now you're going to have not only the states that are there. That's why the handles are up. That's why the total is up 30%. But Missouri is putting it on the ballot. Maybe the polls say it's going to pass overwhelmingly. Prediction within the next 3 years, you're going to have closer to 40 states than you have 30 states. And as a result, you're going to have a lot more money. And the states are going to be shut out soon. It's only Utah, surrounded by everybody else making more money than they are.
Let's talk about Netflix and their golf series that everyone talks about. Season 2 of full swing. Now they're getting into the live drama and the war between PGA and live golfers. This should be dramatic.
Well, obviously, you knew Netflix was going to do that because it's a storyline, and the stories sell based on the drama. And a lot of people talking about how Liv's viewership is up 30, 40%, and because of Dustin Johnson and John Rahm and some of the guys, Mickelson, they're going to get into being a normal tour. Well, everybody still likes to play one against the other, and they may merge ultimately, but before they do, Netflix is going to have a hell of a time.
Looks like my friend Derek Schiller's doing well down with the Braves as revenue goes over $600 million. Guess he's not having a problem feeding his family.
I think he's going to be fine, just like his dad. And the bottom line of all of this is that Truist Park, the Braves competition, the fact that sponsorship deals and TV deals have a built-in accelerator just at about this time of their cycle. The Braves, as you know, because you were there, was the most excellent team nobody cared about. Now they continue to play well, but the revenues are catching up.
Masson, how are those baseball negotiations going for TV in and around the Beltway?
Comcast, Masson, everybody is now trying to figure out how those negotiations will, A, close, and B, impact not only the Nationals, but the Orioles as well. You got two teams and a heck of a lot of regional cable operators, all depending on how this is valued and how it closes. So it needs to continue to move forward for the sake of all of these other regionals as well as Major League Baseball.
Now in Charlotte, the Panthers are filing paperwork for their new practice facility. Now we know why the owner won't pay Brian Burns.
Well, listen, The reason why the owner won't pay Brian Burns has very little to do with the facilities to be done in Charlotte. Charlotte was a great franchise, has been. Jerry Richardson's legacy is he said a few things that weren't the right things for him to say, but he did bring pro football to Charlotte. And everybody now wants to talk about a new stadium. It is that time in the cycle where they're talking about it. So David Tepper, the owner, until a new stadium deal has to be considered, they better start winning.
The PPA Tour and Major League Pickleball closed their merger. Pickleball has taken over the world, and Haro has become a professional pickleball player in South Florida in his spare time, which he has very little of.
Not quick enough to do that, by the way, but there are a lot of athletes, because the payouts are increasing by 250% because of this merger. There are a lot of professional tennis players who I've talked to recently who are saying, maybe I should take a run at this because this may be better for me. And how about the leagues now with 24 teams and another 20 on the other side? It is the hottest commodity out there.
How about Sports Radar? I know SportsGrid has had relationships with them. Now they got to deal with an ATP events.
Yeah. What they're doing is adding the data analog to the streaming. So you have streaming, plus you have the data, and now you have OTT combined with it. It's happening all over. Look for streaming as well as all of these other media things to continue to move forward, by the way. See you in Atlanta, College Football Hall of Fame, big deal now. You'll take it from here, but I'm excited about the weekend.
Look at Rick Haro. He's everywhere, even at the College Football Hall of Fame and Maxwell Award. A great big that can block shots, a team that can play defense, and seniors that can put the ball in the hole. That's who you bet on. You don't bet on freshmen. You don't bet on teams that don't play defense. There you go.
I mean, you got to run the guy over to call a foul in a tie game in that kind of a spot. That was a bad job by those refs.
Ferrall Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
The Lakers lose by double digits last night on the road in Phoenix against the Suns. The Suns get their first victory following the All-Star break, winning by 10 in covering.
Anthony Davis played 42 minutes in that game. LeBron James played 37 minutes in a loss. This is the same thing. It's like repeating this over and over and over. Sure, do you want to win these basketball games? Yes, but you sort of say to yourself, all right, at what cost do we have?
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Like the Minnesota Wild were down by 2 goals today. They were down by 3 goals, actually, today at one point. And they came back and won. Like teams like, the Edmonton Oilers and the Coyote game went back and forth. The NHL really, you could argue, really is the best sport for in-game betting, where you can pull the trigger on both teams.
Sports Rage Late Night, only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Lucky enough, we have Adam Kaplan, our NFL insider, on the phone today. He's having trouble traveling with inclement weather, but fortunately, we're able to still talk to him about everything that has gone down at the Combine, but there's other issues. Why don't we start with this, Adam, today? Thanks for still checking. What did you think of Mike Evans getting that fat deal to stay in Tampa? He needs to unmute. Is he muted or something? Have we lost Adam? Let's try one more time. Adam. Okay, we lost Adam. Do we have him? No? No, we don't. We'll go with Carver High. I guess all the technology cannot stop the weather from dominating Adam's segment today. We have tried everything. I just had him on the phone. I was talking to him about Kelce's retirement, and then he disappeared again. God forbid the hail and tornadoes and lightning and the airport shutting down. Oh, my God, the children, help them all. Please, Carver High.
Yeah, it's not easy, that's for sure. Never easy. I do actually have, since you went to me, breaking news, Scotty, from the Spew newsroom that just came in moments ago out of the NHL. The Devils have chopped Lindy Ruff. Say goodbye, say goodnight, Lindy, as they show him the door, the Devils. So we get a coach chopped right before the trade deadline coming up on Friday. Of course, the Devils haven't been playing well, Scotty, and that's just putting it nicely here, as they have now fallen to 7 points back in the Metro for that third slot, and they are 8 points back of the wild card. So not a good scene. Devils say goodbye to Lindy Ruff.
Well, I mean, I guess I'm not surprised based on their recent failings and falling and losing and not scoring and basically getting schooled every night. They got schooled again in Los Angeles, 5-1, and nothing is going well at all. And perhaps they said it's now or never to try to save this season. So what is their plan? Who's going to step in there and save this?
Travis Green will be the interim head coach. Of course, was with the Canucks a few years ago. He was the head coach there. So Travis Green, Scotty, will guide them the rest of the way here through the regular season.
Okay, so
if I
missed that earlier, my apologies. I'm dealing with all these other issues at the very same time. So I didn't hear you say that to me. So Travis Green gets a gig. I don't know if this is, frankly, going to work. I think a lot of it, and I know that this is not the reason, but they had drama with this team a month ago when two players left the team that were involved in the junior hockey Canadian sex scandal, that the lawsuit, and all these players that have left the NHL. The Devils had two of them. They'll deny it till the day is blue that affected their season. But you and I both know that's when all this started. They started playing bad hockey after that. I don't believe that's why they stink now, but that's when it started.
I'm not going to lie. I don't think they've been great all year. There was so much high expectation coming into this season because they were so good last year. Beat the Rangers, of course, in the first round. They finished with 110 points, whatever it was. And I think expectations were sky high. Hughes was out injured for a lot of the first half. That put him in a hole. And the same problem that they had last year kind of was a bigger problem for them this year, Scotty, and that is they don't have a goaltender. And they haven't had one. And they can't stop anybody. So as good as Hughes is, and he scores for them every night, and he's got tons of points, they lose these games like yesterday where they give up 5-6 goals to the Kings who can't score. So I think they've been mediocre all year, to be quite honest with you. And this is kind of a last-ditch effort to try to save things with 20 games left in the regular season. I think they got too many teams to climb over. I think there's a lot of teams that have been better than them, and I don't think they're going to pass all these teams no matter what they try.
Where are they exactly? And I agree with everything you just said. They have been fair to Midland all year. I'll give you Hughes and Heeshire, and that's it.
Yeah, they are 7 points back of third in the Metro, which is the Flyers. They're 8 points back of the second wild card, which is Tampa and Detroit, or both wild cards, Tampa and Detroit, both with 72 points right now. The Devils have 64.
They're barely in front of the Penguins.
They are only 2 points ahead of the Penguins. The Penguins have 62, the Devils have 64. So they're just as buried as Pittsburgh is right now. That's for sure.
That's why they fired him, because they look like they're dead.
Exactly, precisely. So there you go with that. I'll give you some more hockey coming up here after the break, as we do have some games tonight that we have to talk about. All right, let me finish this NFL because I have a few other things for you. The Patriots are interested in Dalton Schultz. You talked to him at the Super Bowl.
Yes, I did. Great guy.
They're a great guy. We'll see. That would help the Patriots. They could use anybody who's good up there in Foxborough. The 49ers over the weekend promoted Nick Sorensen to defensive coordinator. They hired Brandon Staley as well, former Chargers coach. He will be the assistant head coach. And then, of course, the after-the-fact story, Scotty, is that they allegedly wanted to try hire Steve Spagnuolo away from the Chiefs, but that was before he signed a new deal there. He was never leaving Kansas City to do the same job somewhere else. He would only leave to be a head coach.
Like another pathetic example of bad journalism. Like, let's run a story about something that was never going to happen, that almost happened but didn't happen. It's like doing a story about someone about to possibly get a job. This is the same kind of nonsense as they ran stories about Eric Bieniemy for the last 5 years, that he was always going to be the head coach of these teams. And now he's in college football because nobody in the NFL wants to give him a head coaching job. And now he's at UCLA. It's the same kind of thing. Here, let's do a story on Steve Spagnuolo going to the 49ers. Close. Didn't happen. No cigar. It's just a weak, pathetic story that doesn't matter, and it doesn't need to be pushed.
It doesn't. And it's one thing if you say it before it happens. Like if before he went back to the Chiefs or before they brought him,
that he's talking to him.
They're really looking at him. There's a chance Spagnuolo might go to the Niners. That's one thing. But weeks after the fact, to say, oh, this could have happened. Yeah, well, it didn't. They did this a couple weeks ago, too. Remember when a week after the NBA trade deadline, you had the big, the Warriors talked to the Lakers, and they really wanted LeBron to come there. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
He didn't, but that was say that before the deadline. Say 12 hours before the deadline, not a week later.
And Murray was going to 12 teams, and it never ends. Nonsense. How about this one they're doing now? Baker Mayfield, the Patriots have a lot of interest in him, but he won't take a hometown discount in Tampa. He may end up in New England. Like, it's the same thing as me telling you stories every week about how pathetic it is when I see top 7 landing spots for this guy, top 7 for this guy, top 7. Or how about after teams lose when they run the old proverbial, let's listen to the fallout from the big loss. Let's listen to the fan reaction. Season ended, and now let's see the fallout and hear the stories of what could have been. It's just pathetic. It really is. It's changed so badly that the social media has changed it so badly that now if you blow a snot out of your nose on the ground playing basketball in the park, it becomes a story. Top landing spots for Pharrell's Lug.
Many in Indianapolis this past week now believe that the NFL is going to push the NFLPA to expand to 18 regular season games. Now, I got an idea, Scotty. How about we push for, you know what? Let's not have an off season. Why don't we just, because we can never have too much of a good thing. Let's play 82 regular season games and play 12 months a year. Let's just play as much as everyone else. I don't care if it's football. They don't need time off. Who cares? Let's just keep playing. It's nonsense at this point.
How about this?
It really is.
How about this? they can't even get guys to play in the 16th and 17th games,
Right.
because everyone is so crippled from injuries that the NFL playoffs become about attrition. Who isn't injured will eventually be the teams that make it to the conference championship games and Super Bowl. Who doesn't have injury problems? And it's because they've already screwed it up once by going to 17, and now they want 18. 68 isn't enough in college. They're going to go to 80. 12 isn't enough in college football. Now they're going to 14 before the ink is dry on the deal for 12. I mean, it is embarrassing as these stories get worse by the ones you give me. I mean, the stories get worse, not by you, but by sports media and social media are so pathetic. I mean, what is next? I got an idea. How about we have 5 presidents at the same time?
Why not? And look, we all love the NFL, right? We love it. We love those Sundays in the fall.
We don't need 18 games.
It's just eventually, like you say, you're going to get to the point where it's like, when is enough enough? Like we all hate preseason games. Sure, I'd love to get rid of another preseason game too. Who wouldn't? They're stupid. But you got to know the limit at some point. And it is happening, by the way. They could do all this many believe. That means it's happening.
God.
They're going to play 18 games. It's going to happen. And finally,
they need
FedEx
more
Field,
preseason games.
FedEx Field in Washington will now be Commanders Field. As FedEx has said, thanks but no thanks. We are out of here. The
what
place
do we
the
call
Commanders play. The place
No.
the Commanders play. All right, the
dump.
The dump. That's it.
It is the dump,
Finished.
and it will always be the dump until they implode the dump.
That's it.
Point guard, a great big that can block shots, a team that can play defense, and seniors that can put the ball in the hole. That's who you bet on. You don't bet on freshmen. You don't bet on teams that don't play defense. There you go.
I mean, you got to run the guy over to call a foul in a tie game in that kind of a spot. That was a bad job by those refs.
Ferrall Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
The Lakers lose by double digits last night on the road in Phoenix against the Suns. The Suns get their first victory following the All-Star break, winning by 10 in covering.
Anthony Davis played 42 minutes in that game. LeBron James played 37 minutes in a loss. This is the same thing. It's like repeating this over and over and over. Sure, you want to win these basketball games, yes, but you sort of say to yourself, all right, at what cost do we have?
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Like the Minnesota Wild were down by 2 goals today. They were down by 3 goals, actually, today at one point. And they came back and won. Like teams like, the Edmonton Oilers and the Coyote game went back and forth. The NHL really, you could argue, really is the best sport for in-game betting, where you can pull the trigger on both teams.
Sports Rage Late Night, only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should be over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards, we are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
So, unbelievable. Tornadoes, hail, wind, airports, lightning, and then to the SportsGrid limo with Vinny Bruschetta. Somehow, from being on the phone in the limo, now we have Adam Kaplan, our NFL insider, inside his studio at his home. He has been dropped off by Vinny, and here he is. Thank God for Vinny. And we start with the Evans deal in Tampa. And I want to know, obviously he got the bag and he's their best player and has been their best player for a long time. But how will this affect the Baker Mayfield monies? Because, I've heard, really ridiculous stories about, now all of a sudden the Patriots are interested in him. I still think he's Tampa's. Will they get that deal done? And how did it start and end with Evans getting the bag?
All right. So as of Saturday, they had not even been close to reaching a deal, but the Bucs knew that they had an issue here. You've got the tag deadline tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern. They did not want to use the tag. They could use one on Baker Mayfield to make sure that he remains a Buck, and we'll get to him in a second. They don't want him going anywhere. But the bottom line is they made a decision. Unlike to start the season, I'm told they actually backed out. They ended negotiations for the season. Evans did not want to. He wanted to actually re-sign with them, and that didn't happen. But this time around, they made a decision because he had such a great season that he was going to finish these next 2 seasons, or 3, but it wound up being 2. The hope is that he'll be able to retire as a Buck. And quite frankly, it's 2 years, averaging $26 million a season. So they know they'll have him this season and next. And look, if he plays great this season, they could still extend that final season to lower his cap number and let him definitely return for a 3rd season and more possibly. And by the way, he was absolutely phenomenal last season, just incredible. The only thing that you worry about are the drops, but he's durable. This is an incredible stat, Ferrall. Every season of his 10-year career, over 1,000 yards. That's incredible, Ferrall. Few in NFL history have done that. He's going to be a Hall of Famer someday, and they want him to retire as a Buck, by the way, but he's not really slowing down. Now let's turn our attention to Baker Mayfield. They've talked to Tom Mills' agent. They want him back. They got obviously a bargain last year. Baker wants to be back. That's the key thing here, but they're not done yet. They feel confident they're going to be able to get his deal done. Kyle Trask is not the future quarterback for the Bucs. Baker Mayfield, they believe, is. He's still relatively young. You and I know at quarterback, and he's not 30 yet. You could play well into your mid to late 30s. That's not a problem. And they want this guy to be a Buck. And I could tell you this also with the Buccaneers and Baker Mayfield, they rallied around him. Really good leader. The players and coaches really took to him. A lot of them didn't know him, but it really worked out. And look, they'll figure out a way to get this done. I'm not too worried about it. There is no plan B here. The bottom line is if a surprise happens and some reason he's not a Buck, they'd have to look to the draft, and they don't want to do that. They want him around for a while.
I think one of the reasons he won him all over is, frankly, how tough he is.
Yep. Oh, yeah. You and I have talked about that. Sometimes he played bad knee, bad ribs. He's not the biggest guy in the world at under 6'1". But one thing I do want to add here, with Mike Evans back for at least 2 seasons, they got Chris Godwin, Trey Palmer, who's an explosive receiver. He was a rookie out of Nebraska last season. This holds them off from having to draft a receiver high. Now they can look at their defense. They need help at corner and safety. Don't forget Antoine Winfield, their star safety. They're still trying to get a deal done with him. But the bottom line is they need some help in their secondary. Now they don't have to worry about the receiver position, at least for this draft.
I know a lot happened in Philadelphia today with Kelce retiring after 13 seasons. Quite the press conference. He could barely get through it.
pretty incredible. 41 minutes. Now, he made a decision, Scott, that he was not going to take questions. He just wanted to get through this. I know his family was in town, Travis, his mom, his agent, and pretty interesting situation because if you really look at it, Scott, he was a 6th-round pick. And I remember doing some reporting on this back in 2011. He had appendicitis at the combine. That's why he weighed 280 pounds at just over 6'2". And yeah, he was an athletic center, but teams are like, what's going on with this guy? Why is he so thin? Because you want the guy around 300. But the Eagles like what they saw. Not only did they draft him in the 6th round, that's half the story. The other part of the story is he started every game as a rookie. He took Jamal Jackson's job. He was the veteran center out of Delaware State. Remember talking to Jamal about this? He kind of knew when Howard Mudd installed Kelce as a starter to begin the season. His days were numbered, and he never looked back. And Kelce is an amazing player. And here's a nugget for you, Scott. It wasn't going well for Kelce after the 15th season after Chip Kelly was fired. They actually made him available to be traded. And thankfully for the Eagles, they didn't wind up trading him. Then you know what happened after that? They kept him. He was a star in their 17th Super Bowl run, and he's obviously going to be a Hall of Famer someday. An incredible football player. And by the way, he was a walk-on, Scott, a walk-on at the University of Cincinnati as a linebacker. Then he went to the NFL. He'd only played center for one full season. That was his last season at the University of Cincinnati.
Did you think he was going to retire the whole time that we waited for this?
I would say 2 years ago, talking to both sides, they both thought he would, but as Jason would always say, it depends how he felt at the end of every season. Look, he's played with broken toes, bad ribs. He tore his ACL many years ago, but one of the toughest players. We know all football players are tough, but one of the toughest players I've ever seen in my career, and a heck of a guy. And you know Philly pretty well. When he during the Super Bowl parade when he wore the Mummers uniform, I mean, does it get any better than that? And he's a true beloved Philadelphian. When you really look at it, he's going to retire, I believe, in Chester County. I grew up here, so if you look at all the great athletes, Allen Iverson, Dr. J, Barkley. Now Barkley was traded. Dr. J also played for the Nets. Iverson wound up being traded, as you know. Few players in this market ever get to play for the same team. That's the way it is. And Kelce somehow played all 13 years with the Eagles.
I still believe that he will fall behind in the annals of greatness in Philadelphia with Always Sunny in Philadelphia, Rob McElhenney's show with those idiots at the Patty's Pub. Clearly the greatest thing that's ever happened, including Rocky, in Philadelphia.
Yeah, you know what's crazy? I've only seen bits and pieces of that show. I know about it. I've heard about it, of course, but
I think you're too smart to watch that show.
It's running longer. It's actually running longer, if I'm not mistaken, right?
It is.
Kelce's career. Yeah.
It's 17 seasons, and I have never seen more idiots in my life than on that show. It is so funny and stupid. I believe it is way below your mental capacity or pay grade to watch it. I think you would not last 3 seasons. I'm in the 8th season, and I know that my son watched 16 seasons of it, and it is vulgar, disgusting, and hilarious. And it is the dumbest thing I've ever seen in my life, and I think it is the greatest thing that's ever happened in Philadelphia.
No, I got to watch it, man. I know Danny DeVito was in it. But one thing we should mention, Cam Jurgens, who, by the way, is another guy who's super athletic, who was a 2nd-round pick 2 years ago, who is new to the offensive line. He only played offensive line his final 2 years at Nebraska. Came there as the tight end. He is the replacement for Kelce. That's their plan, who played right guard this season. But Cam Jurgens was a 2nd-rounder, super athletic, a little bit bigger physically than Kelce. But, man, it doesn't get any better than this guy. And, look, the Eagles, by the way, 4 returning starters on their offensive line, but Kelce will not, as he is retired.
I am hearing that the Broncos absolutely love eating dead money sandwiches.
Yeah, well over 80 million. Look, you and I talked about this week. Last week, I told you they're not going to be able to trade him. Nobody's going to want him. So they gave up hope. They're going to cut him. They're going to avoid that guarantee next year, which is enormous. They were not going to guarantee that $37 million, so they're going to cut him before. Technically, he's got to be on the roster at the start of the league year, but they can cut him 1 minute after 4:00 next Wednesday on the 13th, and they're going to do that. They're going to cut him. Nobody wants him. Now, in terms of a trade, Russell Wilson may be able to find another team where he could compete for a starting job, but boy, it did not work, and he was awful 2 years ago. Made some improvement, not enough. The strangeness of the Broncos approaching him to restructure his deal at midseason, he said no. You knew his days were numbered. He's in his mid-30s now. It's been pretty durable. That's not been the problem, but he's in a regression. He needs to go somewhere where he's going to be supported. But Sean Payton couldn't hide his anger. You know how frustrated he was. This was not a secret. So they avoid the big salary next year, but they owe him this year's fully guaranteed salary. Bottom line is he'll be playing elsewhere. Now, because there are teams that are still looking for a quarterback, a starter, he should be able to go somewhere to compete for it. But it's highly unlikely, Scott, he's going to walk in anywhere and start. Atlanta's looking for a starting quarterback. They need a developmental guy. They need a young guy. They need a veteran. Pittsburgh is just looking for someone to compete. They still want Kenny Pickett to be their starter. The Bucs we just talked about, they want Mayfield back. The Vikings want Cousins back. The Raiders now are looking for a quarterback, Aiden O'Connell. Their hope is that he can compete for the starting job. He was a fourth round out of Purdue last year. They know he's capable of doing better with better support. But there are not a lot of places, Ferrall, where you look at and say, okay, he's the guy. That's not the case. He's got to go somewhere and compete for it.
I mean, who cares if somebody's giving you $39 million? I would be like, I don't care what happens to me when I'm getting that fat check in the mail every month.
Yeah, and by the way, he's owed a $22 million fully guaranteed option bonus for next season. And then he's got the $17 million money. So the $39 million they owe him, that's part of this dead money and the signing bonus proration. So they're going to take a massive cap hit. And by the way, we talked about this last week. As I understand it, part of their plan is to let Jarrett Stidham, this will be the second year of his 2-year deal, to compete for it. They'd like to draft a quarterback as well or sign a veteran to compete for it. They're not handing Stidham the job. He's going to have competition. But Sean Payton really likes him. And here's a guy who did get minimal starting time with the New England Patriots.
So the Chiefs will tag Snead, and then they'll be able to do this deal with Jones?
Yeah, well, their hope is here. Now, by the way, it's not a done deal that they won't do a sign and trade with L'Jarius Sneed. His franchise tag number, which he was tagged today, he hasn't signed it yet. It's a 1-year fully guaranteed salary once he signs it over just $19 million. They want to work out something with him where they could lower his cap number. If he signs the tag, that's the number that he would play on if he's with the Chiefs this season. You can't lower the tag number once he signs it, and the tag is what it is. But with Chris Jones, the feeling is they're going to be able to get a deal done. And look, they can't tag him. You only get one tag, but both sides, and by the way, Chris Jones went on record saying he wants to be a Chief, but both sides want to get a deal done. It was a little bit different from last year. Remember, they could not get a deal done, which is why he played on that 1-year salary with a little bit of help with incentives. But the bottom line is, Scott, they want to keep this thing rolling here. You got Andy Reid, who's coming back. He's going to get a new deal. You got Mahomes. One way or the other, they expect to keep Chris Jones. But with L'Jarius Sneed, Scott, it's really hard to pay both of these guys. And by the way, other key free agents, Drew Tranquill, who was a part-time starter. Remember, he filled in for Nick Bolton. He's out there. They like to bring him back. It's going to be hard to. So, look, they want to keep the band together. They want to go, Scott, for the three-peat. That simply doesn't happen in the National Football League, but they want to go for it.
Well, I think a big mistake would be trading Sneed. I mean, he was the best in that secondary, bar none, hands down, no questions asked. And I think he's an absolute badass. They should just keep him. Don't trade him.
And by the way, they don't have anyone, we should address this, if they wind up doing a sign and trade. They have nobody who could replace him. They'd have to look into the draft. And he's an absolute stud of a player. He's been a great story of a former fourth-round pick out of 2020. Yes, look, they want to keep the band together for as long as they did, but they've shown the willingness. Remember, now they traded Tyreek Hill. Nobody thought they'd win the Super Bowl that next season, and they did.
Everyone was talking about Adam Kaplan's 4.39 in the 40 at the combine, and then a kid ran a 4.2, and everyone stopped talking about Adam, and that's when the bad weather started. Thank God we got him on today. Adam Kaplan, ladies and gentlemen. A great big that can block shots, a team that can play defense, and seniors that can put the ball in the hole. That's who you bet on. You don't bet on freshmen. You don't bet on teams that don't play defense. There you go.
I mean, you got to run the guy over to call a foul in a tie game in that kind of a spot. That was a bad job by those refs.
Ferrall Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
The Lakers lose by double digits last night on the road in Phoenix against the Suns. The Suns get their first victory following the All-Star break, winning by 10 in covering.
Anthony Davis played 42 minutes in that game. LeBron James played 37 minutes in a loss. This is the same thing. It's like repeating this over and over and over. Sure, do you want to win these basketball games? Yes, but you sort of say to yourself, all right, at what cost do we have?
The Early Line. Only on SportsGrid.
Like the Minnesota Wild were down by 2 goals today. They were down by 3 goals, actually, today at one point. And they came back and won. Like teams like, the Edmonton Oilers and the Coyote game went back and forth. The NHL really, you could argue, really is the best sport for in-game betting, where you can pull the trigger on both teams.
Sports Rage Late Night. Only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
All right, Ferrall finish time. Zach Wheeler and the Phillies, a 3-year, $126 million deal, highest annual salary for a contract extension ever. Tonight's NHL games, I like Boston and Toronto. I bet the Rangers to win on the money line, even money at home. I like the Flyers over the Blues in Philadelphia, Vegas at Columbus, Colorado at home. I think they'll crush the Hawks again. They beat them the other night, 5-0. Same thing here. I'd be willing to lay 2.5 goals. Calgary, I don't want any part of it, but if I was forced to, I would bet them over Seattle tonight. I did bet the Bruins Leafs under 6 goals and the Knights Jackets over 6.5 goals. I got both of those at plus money, and you can check those out on FerrallOnTheBench.com for tonight's hockey. Eckroat wins the Cognizant Classic in South Florida. Unfortunately, Carver High did not cash tickets. We're very upset about that. Shinnecock Hills will host the U.S. Open for men and the women in 2036. Johnny Manziel says he won't go anymore to the Heisman ceremonies until they give Reggie Bush his Heisman back. Christian Pulisic has been sent death threats after a Milan-Lazio match. Former Pirate catcher Ed Ott, who I remember and I saw in the World Series, dead at 72. A Virginia couple feared dead after their yacht stolen by Caribbean prisoners. They broke out of jail, stole a yacht from these people, the couple, and they're believed to have been thrown overboard to their deaths. Box cutter wielding creep arrested for slashing the neck of a New York City church caretaker who confronted him for going to the bathroom on a car. A woman slashes a New York City cab driver after stiffing him on a fare. She wasn't done with not paying the fare. She cut his throat while she was at it. It's such a lovely city that we live in. Stranger bashes a woman with a baseball bat in a random New York City attack. That's going to happen to me after tonight's show. GTD is next. Go to VerrallOnTheBench.com for all the action. We'll see you again tomorrow at 3 Eastern for